The sky was painted with the soft colors of evening as Mira walked down the dusty road that led to her old family farm. Years had passed since she had last seen it. The wind carried the familiar scent of soil, grass, and blooming flowers. The golden fields stretched out like waves, whispering secrets of her childhood. Mira slowed her steps as the farmhouse came into view. It stood at the edge of the hill, surrounded by tall trees that swayed gently in the breeze. The house looked smaller than she remembered. The red paint had faded and the roof showed signs of age. The windows were dusty, but they reflected the same warm light that used to greet her every morning when she was a little girl. She stood there for a long time, her heart full of mixed feelings. It was strange to see a place that once felt endless now appear so quiet and still. Mira had left the farm years ago to live in the city. Life had taken her far away, chasing dreams that slowly lost their meaning. When her parents passed away, the farm was left to her, but she could never bring herself to return. Now, after so many years, something inside her had changed. She wanted to find peace again, to reconnect with the place that shaped her heart. As she pushed open the old wooden gate, it creaked like it always used to. The path leading to the porch was overgrown with weeds. The once neat garden had turned wild, but even in its untamed state, Mira could see the beauty of it. She smiled as she noticed the old apple tree still standing near the barn. She used to climb it as a child, pretending to be an explorer reaching for the sky. Inside the farmhouse, dust filled the air. The wooden floors groaned under her feet. She placed her bag on the table and looked around. The furniture was covered with white sheets and sunlight filtered through the curtains in soft golden lines. She pulled off the sheets one by one, revealing the old chairs, the bookshelves, and her mother's rocking chair near the window. Everything was just as it had been left. Mira spent the next few hours cleaning. She opened all the windows to let in fresh air. The sound of birds filled the rooms, and it felt like the house was breathing again after a long sleep. By sunset, she sat on the porch with a cup of tea, watching the colors fade over the horizon. The silence was comforting. For the first time in years, she felt calm. As night settled, Mira looked toward the hill behind the farmhouse. That hill held many memories. She used to explore it as a child, imagining secret tunnels and treasure hidden under the rocks. Her father would always warn her to stay away after dark, saying that the ground there was unstable. She smiled at the memory, wondering if those stories had any truth in them. The next morning, Mira woke up early. The air was cool and the smell of rain drifted from far away. She walked out with a basket to gather some wildflowers. Her steps led her naturally toward the hill. The grass was tall, brushing against her legs as she climbed. Birds flew overhead, and the sound of a distant stream added music to the quiet morning. When she reached the top, she paused to catch her breath. From there, she could see the whole valley, the farmhouse, the river, and the endless fields stretching beyond. It looked peaceful, untouched by time. As she turned to walk back, something unusual caught her attention. Near the base of the hill, where the rocks formed a small wall, part of the ground looked disturbed. The earth had shifted, revealing a small gap between the stones. Curiosity sparked inside her. Mira knelt down and brushed away the weeds that covered the area. The more she cleared, the larger the opening appeared. It was dark inside, like the mouth of a hidden tunnel. Her heart began to beat faster. She remembered playing in that same spot as a child, but she never saw anything like this before. She leaned closer and felt a faint breeze coming from the gap. That meant it connected to a deeper space. The idea excited her, though a small part of her felt uneasy. Who had built it? How long had it been there? She picked up a small rock and tossed it inside, listening carefully. It clattered for several seconds before the sound faded away. The space inside was larger than she expected. Mira stood up and looked around. The area was quiet. Even the birds had stopped singing. She stepped back, thinking she should come back later with a flashlight and proper gear. Still, she could not shake the strange feeling that the place was calling to her. It was the same feeling she used to have as a child when she sensed something mysterious nearby. Back at the farmhouse, she spent the afternoon thinking about the discovery. She ate a simple meal and tried to focus on repairing some old shelves, but her mind kept returning to that gap in the hill. As night fell, thunder rolled across the sky. The rain came down in heavy sheets, and Mira watched from the window as lightning illuminated the hill in the distance. For a brief second, she thought she saw the light reflect off something metallic near the opening. Sleep did not come easily that night. She dreamed of the hill, of glowing patterns on stone walls and of whispers echoing through the darkness. When she woke before dawn, she knew she had to see what was inside the cave. She packed a flashlight, a rope, and a bottle of water. The storm had passed, leaving the air fresh and cool. As the first rays of light touched the sky, Mira climbed the hill again. The grass was wet under her boots, and the world around her seemed washed clean. When she reached the spot, she saw that the rain had cleared even more of the soil, revealing a narrow entrance leading downward. It looked like a natural cave, but the edges were too smooth, almost shaped by hands or tools. She hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath and stepped inside. The air was cool and damp. Her flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing rough stone walls that sparkled faintly, as if tiny crystals were embedded in them. The tunnel sloped downward, twisting slightly as it went. Mira walked carefully, testing each step before moving forward. The silence inside was deep, broken only by the sound of dripping water and her own breathing. After a few minutes, she noticed faint markings on the wall. They looked like lines and circles carved into the rock. Some were simple shapes, others more complex. She ran her fingers over one of the carvings. The stone was smooth, not like any tool work she had seen before. The deeper she went, the more she felt that this place was not an ordinary cave. The air seemed to hum faintly, a low vibration that she could almost feel in her bones. It was not threatening, but it filled her with wonder. The tunnel finally opened into a wider chamber. Mira stopped and shone her light around. The space was large enough to fit a small house inside. The walls shimmered with faint blue light, as if they held their own glow. In the center of the chamber stood something that took her breath away. It looked like a large circular structure made of metal, half buried in the ground. Strange symbols were etched around its surface. The design was elegant and precise, unlike anything she had ever seen. Mira walked slowly around it, her eyes wide with amazement. She noticed that part of the structure was damaged. A piece of it had broken off, revealing thin wires and crystal-like material inside. It did not look like any machine built in recent times. Mira crouched beside it and examined it closely. The craftsmanship was beyond her understanding. She felt a strange warmth when her hand hovered near the surface, as if the metal still held some kind of energy. She stayed there for a long time, studying every detail, feeling both excitement and awe. Her flashlight began to flicker, reminding her that she had been inside for quite a while. She took a step back and looked around the glowing chamber once more. This was no ordinary discovery. She could sense that the cave hid a secret far greater than she could imagine. As she turned to leave, her light caught something written on the wall near the exit. The symbols there were different, arranged in neat rows. Beneath them was a simple carving that looked almost human, a figure with outstretched arms surrounded by what seemed like stars. Mira traced the outline with her fingers, feeling a strange connection to it. It was as if the figure was welcoming her, inviting her to uncover the truth. When she finally stepped out of the cave, the morning sun had risen high above the valley. She stood at the mouth of the tunnel, breathing the fresh air deeply. The farm looked peaceful again, but everything felt different now. She knew her life was about to change. Whatever was hidden in that cave had been waiting for someone to find it, and that someone was her. As she walked back down the hill toward her farmhouse, the wind rustled through the grass almost as if whispering her name. Mira felt a mix of fear and excitement. She did not know what she had discovered, but one thing was certain. She was no longer just returning home. She was beginning a journey that would uncover the secret her childhood farm had kept hidden for generations. The morning sun shone bright over the farm, but Mira's thoughts were still inside the cave. The images of the glowing walls and the strange metal structure replayed in her mind again and again. She tried to eat breakfast, but her spoon stopped halfway to her mouth as her mind wandered. Every time she blinked, she saw the smooth carvings and the quiet blue light. It did not feel like a dream. It was real, and it was waiting for her to return. After finishing her meal, she packed a small bag with more supplies. She added a stronger flashlight, a notebook, a pencil, and some rope. She also carried her camera, though she was not sure if pictures could capture the strange light inside the cave. Her heart beat faster as she walked toward the hill again. The morning air was cool and dew clung to the grass. She could hear birds singing in the trees, unaware of the mystery hidden below. When she reached the entrance, Mira stood still for a moment. She could feel the quiet energy of the place. The air that came out of the dark opening was cool and smelled faintly of metal and stone. She took a deep breath and stepped inside again. The beam of her flashlight swept across the walls, catching the familiar carvings. They seemed to shine even brighter than before. This time Mira walked with more confidence. She knew the way down and moved carefully, watching every step. The sound of dripping water echoed softly. As she entered the main chamber, she felt a strange calm. The glowing blue light from the walls filled the space gently, as if the cave itself was alive. She set her bag on the ground and knelt near the metal structure. Her fingers brushed against its surface. It was cold to the touch, yet she could sense a faint vibration beneath it. She took out her notebook and began to sketch what she saw: the circle of metal, the broken section, and the strange markings. The symbols were complex, made up of curved lines and dots, unlike any writing she had ever seen. Mira studied the carvings on the wall near the machine. The symbols there seemed to match some of the ones on the structure. It made her wonder if they were connected. She took pictures with her camera, hoping to study them later. When she turned to another side of the chamber, she noticed something new. Part of the wall seemed slightly different from the rest. The glow there was dimmer, and when she ran her hand across it, she felt a small ridge. She pushed gently, and to her surprise, a section of the wall slid open with a low hum. Behind it was a narrow passage leading deeper underground. Her breath caught in her throat. She hesitated for a moment, looking back at the main chamber. Then curiosity won. She switched on her flashlight again and stepped into the new passage. The air grew cooler. The walls here were smoother, and she could see faint traces of metal embedded in the rock. The passage bent sharply to the left, and when she turned the corner, she gasped. Before her stood another chamber, smaller but filled with strange equipment. There were consoles with dark screens, panels covered with buttons and symbols, and what looked like glass containers arranged neatly along one wall. A soft pulse of blue light blinked from one of the machines. It was faint but steady. Mira approached carefully. The place looked untouched for centuries, yet it still had power. She wondered who had built all this and how it had remained hidden for so long. She brushed dust from one of the panels and noticed a small handprint shape carved into the metal. The shape looked human. Her mind raced with questions. Was this an ancient human outpost? Or something left behind by visitors from another world? She placed her hand gently over the carved shape. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a soft light glowed beneath her palm. The panel hummed to life and symbols began to appear on the screen. Mira stepped back in shock. The symbols changed rapidly, then slowed, rearranging themselves until words formed in a language she could understand. A calm voice filled the chamber, speaking in clear mechanical tones. Human presence detected. Welcome to Observation Post 9. Status, dormant. Data integrity, stable. Energy core at minimal output. Mira stared at the glowing screen. Her heart pounded. The voice had recognized her as human, which meant whoever built this place was connected to her species. She tried to speak, her voice trembling. Who created this place? She asked. The voice paused before replying. This facility was established by the Human Exploration Council. Mission year 2106. Purpose, planetary study and contact record maintenance. Current status, abandoned. Mira felt chills run down her spine. A Human Exploration Council from more than 1,000 years ago? That meant this outpost had been here long before her time. She could hardly believe it. The technology around her was more advanced than anything she had seen. She looked at the other machines. Many were silent, but one of the glass containers suddenly lit up, revealing a small object inside. It looked like a metallic cube about the size of her hand. Lines of light ran across its surface in complex patterns. The voice spoke again. Core archive active. Data stored within this unit contains records of first contact and experimental technology. Warning: restricted access without clearance. Mira did not understand what kind of clearance the voice meant. She stepped closer and examined the cube. It pulsed softly like a heartbeat. She could feel the faint warmth it gave off. Something about it felt alive, or at least aware. She reached out but stopped just short of touching it. Her instincts told her to be careful. She decided to record everything first. She took more pictures, then opened her notebook to write down what she had heard. As she wrote, the voice continued to speak. Last recorded human departure. 214 years after establishment. Reason: communication failure with Earth Command. Mission objective incomplete. This site entered dormant state. The more she listened, the clearer the story became. The people who built this place had been explorers from Earth, sent to study new worlds. Something must have gone wrong, cutting them off from home. The outpost had been forgotten, buried by time until now. Mira's excitement grew. She realized she might be standing in one of humanity's lost history sites. She could almost imagine the explorers working here, studying data, writing reports, dreaming of returning home. A sense of connection filled her heart. Suddenly, her flashlight flickered. The hum in the room grew louder. The cube's light brightened and new words appeared on the screen. Warning, energy surge detected. Stabilization sequence initiating. The air around her vibrated. Mira stepped back as light filled the room. The cube lifted from its stand and hovered in the air. Streams of energy connected it to the panels and the walls. For a moment, she thought it would explode, but then everything calmed. The cube lowered gently and landed back in place. The voice spoke again, softer now. Energy restored to basic operational level. Welcome, new user. Access granted. Mira stood frozen. The cube had accepted her touch even though she had not touched it directly. Somehow it had recognized her as part of the same species as its creators. She felt a strange pull, like the cube was inviting her to learn more. She finally found the courage to ask another question. What is stored inside this cube? The voice answered. Contained within is the blueprint of adaptive human evolution technology, designed to enhance human potential for survival beyond Earth. Access available only through genetic compatibility test. Mira's mouth went dry. The words sounded impossible. Adaptive human evolution? Could that mean the explorers had created something that could change human abilities? She wanted to ask more, but before she could, the light dimmed again. The energy core seemed to be weakening. System entering low power mode, the voice said. User interaction limited. Please return primary power to continue operations. Then silence filled the room once more. Only the faint blue glow remained. Mira stood still, trying to process everything she had heard. She knew she could not leave the discovery unexplored. This was not just an old cave anymore. It was a piece of human history, a secret that had been buried for centuries. She took a deep breath and looked around. Her flashlight was dim now, warning her that its battery was low. She packed her notebook and camera and carefully made her way back through the passage to the main chamber. When she reached the entrance, she turned off her light and looked back one last time. The faint glow from the cave seemed to pulse softly as if alive. Outside, the sunlight was bright and warm. She climbed down the hill slowly, her mind racing. Every step felt heavy with the weight of what she had learned. She looked at the farmhouse below and thought about her parents. Had they ever known about this place? Maybe her father's warning about the hill had been more than just a story. When she reached the house, she sat on the porch with her notebook open on her lap. She wrote everything she could remember, the words of the voice, the cube, the carvings, the glowing walls. She filled page after page, her handwriting hurried but clear. As the day turned to evening, she looked up at the setting sun. The light turned the fields golden once more, but she knew her world had changed. Somewhere beneath her feet was a secret that connected her to humanity's lost explorers. She felt both fear and wonder. Mira made a silent promise to herself. She would return to the cave again no matter what it took. She needed to understand the truth. The outpost had been waiting for someone to find it, and now that she had, she would not turn away. The next morning began with soft sunlight and the sound of birds near the porch. Mira sat with her cup of tea staring at the hill. The memory of the glowing cube, the voice, and the strange chamber would not leave her mind. Every detail was clear as if it had been carved inside her thoughts. She knew she had found something far greater than she could have imagined. All night she had dreamed of lights, stars, and distant voices calling her name. When she woke, she felt that something deep inside her had changed. The cave had chosen her somehow. She did not understand why, but she was certain her discovery carried a message that was meant to be found by humans again. Mira packed her bag once more. She added food, water, extra batteries, and a notebook filled with her notes from yesterday. She was ready to go deeper and learn the truth behind the lost explorers and the mysterious device that held the power of human evolution. She placed a small locket around her neck that once belonged to her mother. It gave her courage as she started her walk up the hill. The air was cool and calm. Dew covered the grass, shining like small stars under the morning light. Every step felt like she was walking toward destiny. When she reached the entrance, she paused again and listened. The wind moved gently through the trees, but the cave remained silent. It seemed to be waiting. Mira turned on her flashlight and entered the dark passage. The tunnel welcomed her like an old friend. The blue glow on the walls flickered softly as if alive. She followed the familiar path until she reached the main chamber. The metal circle still stood at the center, silent but strong. Its surface shone faintly. The carvings around it seemed to shimmer as her light passed over them. She approached the hidden door she had found yesterday and placed her hand on the ridge. It slid open again with a quiet hum, revealing the smaller chamber beyond. The machines stood exactly as she had left them. The cube on the stand pulsed softly, almost like it recognized her presence. Mira set her bag down and stood before the console. The screen was dark, but when she touched the surface, it lit up instantly. The same calm voice spoke again. "Welcome, human user. Identification confirmed. Access level basic. Do you wish to continue exploration of archived data?" "Yes," Mira said softly. The lights in the chamber brightened slightly and several screens on the walls flickered to life. They displayed holographic images of planets, ships, and people wearing strange suits. The voice continued speaking in its clear tone. Mission record. The Human Exploration Council launched 12 teams beyond the solar system. This outpost was established for research on planetary conditions and interaction with intelligent species, designated as Luma. Cooperation successful. Exchange of knowledge completed. Experiment initiated to enhance human adaptation for deep space travel. Mira's eyes widened as the images changed. She saw scenes of scientists working with tall, luminous beings who had gentle faces and eyes that glowed softly. The Luma looked kind and peaceful. Together they worked on machines and crystals that shone with pure light. The voice continued. Experiment results positive. Prototype created. Designation Genesis Core. Function: enhance physical and cognitive limits without damage to human structure. Status of project: incomplete due to loss of communication with Earth. Mira realized the cube must be the Genesis Core. The lost explorers had created technology that could improve human life. Her heart pounded. The words "enhance physical and cognitive limits" echoed in her mind. This was more than a discovery. It was proof that humans had once reached far beyond their world and worked with other intelligent life. She asked, "Where did the explorers go?" The voice paused before answering. Crew members evacuated due to environmental instability. Partial data suggests survival on nearby system. No return signal received. Facility preserved as record of cooperation and advancement. Mira felt a wave of sadness. Those brave explorers had given everything for knowledge and unity. Yet their story had been forgotten by time. She could almost feel their presence around her. The air in the chamber carried a quiet energy of memories and dreams that refused to die. She walked closer to the cube again. It was still glowing, its light stronger than yesterday. A soft hum filled the air, matching her heartbeat. She stretched her hand toward it slowly. Her fingers trembled. The voice spoke again, warning. Interaction with Genesis Core may cause temporary energy resonance. Proceed only with caution. Mira hesitated for a second. She knew this might be risky, but curiosity and purpose were stronger than fear. She gently touched the cube. Instantly, warmth spread through her hand and up her arm. Her flashlight flickered as the blue light from the cube grew brighter. The hum turned into a steady rhythm that filled the entire chamber. Mira's vision blurred. She could see flashes of images that were not her own. Planets, stars, laboratories filled with light, humans working side by side with the glowing beings she had seen before. She felt their thoughts, their emotions, their hopes. They were proud of what they had built and wanted humanity to grow beyond its limits. The light faded slowly, and Mira stepped back, gasping for air. Her heart raced, but she felt no pain. Instead, she felt stronger and more aware. Her senses were sharper. She could hear the soft hum of the machines like music. Even the smallest sound in the cave was clear to her. She looked at her hands. They were glowing faintly, but the light faded after a moment. The voice spoke again. Resonance complete. Energy link established. Genetic compatibility confirmed. User authorized for limited access to Genesis data. Mira blinked in surprise. What does that mean? Human user shares partial genetic pattern with original research team. Access to memory archives granted. You may now view the final records. New images appeared on the screens. This time, the hologram showed a message recorded by a young man with calm eyes and short dark hair. His voice was filled with warmth. My name is Toma. If you are watching this, it means our mission has been rediscovered. We built the Genesis core to help humanity survive the unknown. We believed humans could grow, not through conquest, but through understanding and peace. The Luma taught us that true strength comes from unity. We hope whoever finds this will carry our message forward." Mira watched the recording in silence. The man's face looked kind and determined. Behind him, other members of the team worked near the machines. The Luma stood beside them, their glowing hands guiding the humans. The message ended with Toma looking directly at the camera. "Protect the Genesis core. Use it only when humanity is ready. It can create great change, but it must be guided by compassion and wisdom." The image faded, leaving Mira standing in the quiet chamber. She felt tears in her eyes. The explorers had left behind a gift meant to guide the future. "It was a message of hope, not power," she whispered. "I will protect it. I promise." The cube pulsed softly as if answering her words. She felt its warmth again, calm and steady. It was as if the ancient explorers were still there, listening to her vow. After some time, Mira began to explore the rest of the smaller chamber. She found storage containers filled with old tools, sealed food packs, and documents written in a language she could not read. Some of the devices were broken, but others still glowed faintly. She found a small tablet-like screen that showed maps of stars and systems labeled with strange symbols. She sat on the floor, studying everything she could, her mind filled with possibilities. This place could teach humanity more about its own past than any book or archive. It could change how people understood their place in the universe. But with that thought came fear. If the wrong people discovered this technology, they might use it for greed or control. Mira knew she had to be careful. She decided to keep the secret for now until she learned everything she could. She would protect the cave just as Toma had asked. Hours passed as she recorded every detail in her notebook. The cave was quiet except for the faint hum of the machines. When she finally stood to leave, she looked back at the cube one last time. It seemed almost alive, its light slow and steady like breathing. Outside the cave, the sun was setting. The sky was painted in gold and red. Mira stood at the entrance, looking out over the valley. The farm looked peaceful, unaware of the secret hidden beneath it. She felt a deep connection to the land now. Her family had lived here for generations, and maybe it was no accident that she had returned. She walked down the hill slowly, her bag heavy with notes and her heart filled with purpose. The breeze brushed against her face, carrying the scent of grass and soil. She could almost hear distant voices whispering through the wind, encouraging her to continue. When she reached the farmhouse, she lit a small lamp and sat at the table. She opened her notebook and began to write everything she had learned about the Genesis core, the Luma, and the explorers. Her handwriting was steady now, filled with determination. By the time she finished, the moon had risen high above the fields. The night was calm and the stars shone bright. Mira stepped outside and looked up. Somewhere out there, far beyond the sky, the descendants of those explorers might still exist. She wondered if they ever dreamed of home. Mira placed her hand over her heart and whispered softly, "I will find the truth. I will honor your legacy." The wind moved gently through the trees. It almost sounded like an answer. The stars seemed to shine brighter as if they were watching. Mira stood inside the glowing chamber with her heart beating fast. The strange energy from the ancient device still flowed gently through her body. Her hands trembled a little, but she could feel a new strength rising inside her. The blue light around her seemed to respond to her thoughts. Every time she took a step forward, the symbols on the walls brightened as if welcoming her. She felt a deep connection to this place now, as if it had been waiting for her all along. She looked at the device again. It was not large, but it carried a feeling of great power. Its shape was smooth and made of metal that looked alive, shifting colors from silver to blue. Around it, lines of light moved like rivers, connecting the walls to the ceiling. Mira could sense that this was no ordinary machine. It was something beyond her understanding, something built with purpose and care. Mira took a deep breath and decided to study the markings again. She walked around the device slowly, tracing her fingers over the glowing patterns. They were similar to the ones she saw earlier, but now they seemed clearer. She remembered the words from Toma's log about how the machine could enhance human ability, but only for those who had pure intent. She did not fully understand what pure intent meant, but she knew she had not come here for power or wealth. She came only to understand and protect what had been hidden for so long. Suddenly, the ground under her feet trembled. A deep rumble echoed through the chamber and the air became heavy. The soft blue lights turned into a bright warning red. Mira stepped back quickly, realizing something had changed. The device had activated some kind of defense system. The sound of metal scraping against stone filled the air as parts of the wall began to move. From hidden corners, strange mechanical shapes appeared. They looked like floating orbs with shining eyes and long metal arms. They hovered in the air, scanning the chamber with cold precision. Mira's pulse raced. She understood now that the outpost was never truly abandoned. It had been waiting for an intruder, ready to protect the ancient secret. The orbs moved closer, their lights flickering rapidly. Mira grabbed her small tool bag and took a defensive stance. She knew she could not fight machines that advanced, but maybe she could think her way through this challenge. The first orb sent out a beam of light that scanned her face and hands. Then it released a thin pulse of energy that struck the ground near her feet. The floor shifted and a pattern appeared, glowing bright. It looked like a puzzle of symbols, each connected by lines of energy. Mira realized this was a test. The explorers must have designed these puzzles to judge whether the person who entered could understand their values. She knelt and studied the glowing shapes. Each one represented a part of the ancient story she had seen earlier in the holograms. There were symbols for harmony, courage, compassion, and curiosity. Mira smiled faintly. She began pressing the symbols one by one, choosing the ones that matched those values. When she finished, the pattern shone with a warm light, and one of the orbs lowered its arms. She felt a wave of calm pass through her, as if the machine approved of her choice. But there were still 2 more orbs hovering above, their light sharp and searching. The next one projected an image in front of her. It showed 2 paths inside the cave. One path was bright and smooth, leading toward the exit. The other was dark and rough, leading deeper underground. A voice echoed in her mind, soft but clear. It asked her to choose between safety and discovery. Mira thought carefully. The safe path was tempting, but she knew the explorers had not built this place for those who ran from difficulty. They wanted to find those who had the heart to continue even when things grew uncertain. Mira pointed toward the darker tunnel. The orb blinked once, then slowly floated aside, clearing her way. The ground trembled again as she walked forward. The final orb followed her, staying just behind. It did not attack or project puzzles, but Mira could feel its gaze on her back. She understood this was the last part of the test. Not of knowledge, but of courage. The tunnel narrowed as she went deeper, and the air became cooler. She could hear the faint hum of machines working far below. At the end of the passage, she reached a circular door. It was sealed tightly, and the wall beside it showed another glowing panel. The orb moved closer and scanned the door, then flashed a series of lights as if asking for her input. Mira hesitated. She did not want to damage anything, but she sensed that this was the entrance to the deepest part of the cave, the true heart of the outpost. She placed her hand on the panel. The surface felt warm under her skin. A faint vibration passed through her arm, and then the panel began to display lines of light forming a pattern that looked like a heartbeat. Mira realized that it was reading her pulse. The door was not opened by force but by trust. It was built to respond only to someone who carried the right spirit. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the orb behind her let out a soft tone and the door slowly began to slide open. A gentle blue glow spilled out from inside. Mira stepped through and found herself standing in a small circular room filled with columns of light. In the center stood another device larger than the first, shaped like a crystal rising from the ground. Around it floated images of stars and planets moving slowly as if alive. Mira approached the crystal carefully. The air here felt different, lighter, and filled with energy. The crystal pulsed with rhythm, and she could feel its connection to her heartbeat. When she reached out, it responded with a beam of light that wrapped around her hand. A stream of images filled her mind, visions of explorers, ships, and faraway worlds. She saw humans standing beside beings of light, working together to build something greater than themselves. Tears filled Mira's eyes. She understood now that the explorers had not built this place for themselves. They built it for those who would come after, hoping that one day humanity would be ready to learn and grow again. The machine was not a weapon or a tool of control. It was a teacher, designed to help humans unlock their best qualities: kindness, courage, and wisdom. Suddenly, the orb that had followed her entered the room and stopped beside the crystal. Its light turned from red to soft gold. Then it projected a final message into the air. The message showed the words from the ancient explorers, thanking those who carried their dream forward. It spoke of how true strength was not found in machines but in the hearts of those who used them for good. Mira stood in silence, letting the meaning of the message sink into her. She realized that she had passed the final test. The defense systems no longer saw her as a threat. Instead, they recognized her as the new guardian of the secret. The crystal's glow dimmed slightly, settling into a calm rhythm that matched her own breathing. Mira felt a deep peace inside her. The fear and uncertainty that had filled her heart when she first entered the cave were gone. She now understood why she had been drawn here. The farm, the cave, the memories, and all of it had led her to this moment. She had found not only a piece of humanity's past, but also a guide for its future. She took one last look around the chamber, memorizing every light and shape. Then she turned and began her walk back through the tunnels. The orbs hovered beside her quietly, lighting her way. When she reached the main chamber, the red warning lights had faded, replaced again by soft blue. The device at the center pulsed gently, almost as if it was alive and at peace. Before leaving, Mira placed her hand on the machine and whispered a promise to protect the secret and use its wisdom only for good. The walls shimmered for a moment as if acknowledging her words. Then the glow faded, leaving only the natural light of her flashlight. When she stepped out of the cave and into the cool night air, the stars above seemed brighter than before. The wind carried the scent of earth and rain, and the world felt alive with quiet energy. Mira looked back at the hill that hid the entrance and smiled softly. She had faced her challenge not with strength or force, but with understanding and courage. The journey was not over yet, but she knew now that she was ready for whatever came next. The true secret of the cave was not just the power hidden within it. It was the reminder that the human spirit could rise again, stronger and wiser, guided by compassion and hope. And as she walked back toward her farmhouse, the night sky seemed to whisper a silent promise that this was only the beginning of something far greater. The sun rose gently over the wide fields of Mira's farm. The air smelled of wet grass and morning dew. The golden light touched the old fences, the barn, and the quiet river that flowed nearby. Mira stood near the doorway of her farmhouse, holding a warm cup of tea. She looked at the hill behind the house where the hidden cave lay beneath the earth. It looked peaceful now, but she knew what secrets rested below that calm ground. It had been 3 days since she had returned from the cave. The strange glow from the symbols had faded, and everything around the farm looked normal again. But inside Mira, nothing felt the same. She could still feel the quiet pulse of the device as if it had connected to her in some unseen way. The energy she had received had not faded completely. Her senses were sharper and her thoughts felt clearer. It was as though she carried a small piece of the outpost's wisdom within her. Mira spent the first day resting, trying to understand what she had learned. The vision from the crystal still played in her mind. She saw again the explorers who built the outpost, their hope that one day humans would return to finish what they had started. Mira now understood that she was not chosen by chance. The place had been waiting for someone who still believed in kindness and courage. By the second day, Mira knew she could not keep the discovery to herself. The knowledge hidden in that cave could help all of humanity, but she also feared what might happen if it was misused. If the wrong people found it, they could turn that gift into something harmful. Mira wanted to protect the legacy, not lose it to greed or carelessness. She decided she would share the truth, but in a careful way. She began by writing everything she had seen and learned. Her handwriting filled page after page, descriptions of the glowing walls, the puzzles, the machines, and the crystal. She wrote about the test of courage and the lessons hidden within it. She even drew the markings from memory, hoping they might help others understand the message. As she wrote, a quiet resolve formed inside her. The story was not just about a discovery under her farm. It was about humanity's potential, about people who once reached for the stars and built something good. Mira wanted others to remember that spirit. The next morning, she made a decision. She would invite a few trusted people from the nearby town, people who cared about science, history, and truth. She would show them the cave, but only after making sure they understood the importance of respect and caution. By evening, she had called 3 people. There was Rian, a kind schoolteacher who loved history. There was Lena, an engineer known for her honesty. And there was Thomas, an old friend of her family who had once worked with geological research. When they arrived at her farm, Mira greeted them warmly and invited them inside. They sat around the wooden table, and Mira began to speak. Her voice was calm but full of feeling. She told them everything, from her return to the farm to finding the cave to the tests she had faced. They listened in silence, eyes wide with wonder. When she finished, Thomas leaned forward slowly. He asked if she was sure about what she had seen. Mira nodded and told them she could show proof. She reached into her bag and brought out a small crystal fragment she had found at the cave's entrance. It glowed faintly even under the warm light of the room. The others gasped quietly. "This is not just a story," she said softly. "This is part of something old and powerful. Something made by humans long before us. It was built to protect hope, not to destroy." Ryan's eyes shone with curiosity. Lena looked amazed but serious. They all understood the weight of what Mira was saying. They agreed to see the cave but promised to keep it secret until they could understand it properly. The next morning, the four of them walked toward the hill. The sun was bright and the air was filled with the sound of birds. Mira led them to the entrance she had uncovered. When they entered, the air grew cool and quiet. The others looked around in awe as the walls began to shimmer faintly in response to Mira's presence. It was as if the cave recognized her again. As they moved deeper, Mira noticed something new. The glowing lines along the walls had changed slightly. They now formed softer patterns, as if showing welcome rather than warning. The orbs that had once guarded the cave remained silent, watching but not moving. When they reached the central chamber, the blue light returned, gentle and calm. Lena stepped forward first, examining the ancient machinery with care. She said she had never seen anything like it. Thomas began taking notes, sketching the layout and studying the material. Ryan stood quietly near the crystal, whispering that it felt like standing inside a dream. Mira told them about the tests she had faced. She showed where the puzzles had appeared and described the choices she had made. Lena tried to activate one of the panels, but it stayed still until Mira placed her hand beside hers. Only then did the lines of light awaken. The others stared in silent awe as symbols glowed across the surface. "It listens to you," Lena said softly. "It trusts you," Mira smiled faintly. "Maybe it trusts anyone who means no harm." For hours they studied the cave, collecting information carefully. No one tried to take anything. They knew it was not meant to be removed or broken apart. It was something greater than all of them. When they returned to the farmhouse that evening, the sun was already setting. The sky was filled with warm orange and purple colors. The group sat outside quiet for a long time. Finally, Thomas spoke. "This discovery will change everything if people learn about it. But I agree, we must be careful. It is not a treasure to own. It is a lesson to understand," Mira nodded. She looked at the hill again, the place where the cave lay hidden under the stars. "The explorers left it for the right reason," she said. "They wanted us to grow wiser, not just stronger." Over the next few weeks, they began to work together. Lena built small tools to measure the energy coming from the crystal. Ryan began writing records of everything they found, while Thomas contacted a few researchers he trusted, people who would not reveal the secret too soon. Mira focused on the farm, but every night she returned to the cave, lighting candles and sitting quietly in front of the glowing machine. She often felt as if she could hear a faint hum in her heart, a reminder that she was part of something larger now. As time passed, the story began to spread carefully through trusted hands. Scientists and explorers came quietly to the farm, working with respect and caution. No one tried to claim the discovery for fame. Everyone who came felt the same sense of peace when they stepped into the cave. They could feel the kindness and wisdom that had built it. Months later, small research centers were built near the area. They studied the energy, learning how it could be used to help crops grow faster and clean the soil naturally. It was not used for weapons or power. Instead, it helped rebuild the land. The farm that had once been dry and silent became green and alive again. Mira often stood outside at night watching the stars. She thought about the explorers who had left this gift behind. She hoped that somewhere out there among the stars, they would know that their dream had survived. As years passed, more people came to learn, not to take. Children from nearby towns visited to hear stories about the explorers. Mira taught them what she had learned, that true strength came from courage and kindness, not from machines. One evening, as the sky glowed with the colors of sunset, Mira sat on the porch with Ryan and Lena. The field stretched wide and peaceful before them. The air was calm, filled with the soft sound of wind in the grass. Lena smiled at her and said, "You changed everything, Mira. If you had not come back here, no one would have found it." Mira shook her head gently. "It was never about me. It was waiting for us all along. I just listened." She looked again at the hill where it all began. The stars started to appear one by one, bright and distant. She felt a quiet joy inside her heart. The world was still far from perfect, but for the first time in a long while, it was moving toward something better. The cave had given humanity not just technology, but faith. Faith that people could still rise beyond their limits when guided by goodness. Mira smiled softly, her eyes shining with peace. As the night deepened, the faint blue glow from the hill shimmered once more, like a heartbeat under the earth, reminding her that the legacy of the explorers would live on. Humanity had found its path again, not through power or greed, but through courage, understanding, and hope. And as the stars above reflected on the quiet river near her farm, Mira whispered into the wind, "We remember you, and we will not forget what you taught us."